Good morning, afternoon, evening to you all. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Raquel Ferreira from the Gift Coordination team. A big welcome to the fourth day of the sessions within the Gift General Stewards meeting. Yesterday we had a very interesting first session on public participation. That was in English and French. We hope those of you that were there with us yesterday enjoyed the session. Thank you for the thought-provoking discussions, many of which we will indeed continue today. Today's session keeps the focus on public participation, presenting the latest GIFT network developments on public participation in fiscal policy. Today's language translation will be available in English and French, bringing our esteemed French-speaking colleagues into the conversation. In this regard, a very special welcome to Benin and Senegal. We are looking forward to engaging with you and hearing the latest developments in your countries. Please use the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen, slightly to the right, to select the language of your preference. These public participation sessions are very important since it was the most popular topic that the GIFT stewards indicated in the pre-meeting survey that they actually wanted a session on. We thus hope that by the end of today's session, we would have had many important conversations in this regard and that your expectations would have been met. Once again, a very special welcome to all of our distinguished presenters that have a wealth of knowledge on this topic. These presentations will be a bit shorter today than yesterday to provide some much needed time for more questions and discussions. Firstly, Shruti Bandyopadhyay from the World Bank Group will set the scene for us by presenting the latest global developments on public participation. This presentation is based on a very interesting paper that she co-authored called Mainstreaming Citizen Engagement in Public Financial Management for Better Results. This paper is going to be made available to you together with today's other presentations. It is indeed very rich with information on identifying suitable approaches and tools for public participation in the different stages of the PFM cycle, and stresses that knowing the purpose of the engagement, why you are doing what you want to do, is very important, as well as the contextual factors of the countries concerned as being the key factors to the success of these initiatives. This presentation that sets the context will be followed by examples from two countries that have successfully implemented public participation initiatives. These two countries are Brazil and Sierra Leone. David Avelino from the Institute of Applied Economic Research will present the Brazilian example. This will be followed by Abu Bakar Kamara from the Budget Advocacy Network and Matthew Dingy from the Ministry of Finance that will present the example from Sierra Leone. After that, we have a brief update from countries that are currently undertaking the initiative on the status of these initiatives, what they have in fact learned thus far, and the challenges that they are facing. 5 of these countries are taking part in the Fiscal Openness Accelerator project, which I'm sure you would have heard on throughout the week. This is a GIFT IDP project supporting the development of tailored design mechanisms on public participation along the budget cycle. Each mechanism of participation is being specifically developed by each country for their specific needs. The participant countries are receiving technical assistance in the design, monitoring, and documentation of these cases phase by phase, and in the synthesis of knowledge to facilitate progress as best as possible. The technical assistance will provide insights and lessons learned on best practices and experiences from other countries, including through vital peer exchange amongst the participating countries themselves, therefore by assisting governments in identifying the next steps. In this regard, a very special word of gratitude to the US Department of State's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs, that with others like the World Bank's OGP Multi-Donor Trust Fund are supporting this very important initiative. Updates will be presented for the following 6 countries. So we have Liberia, Senegal, Benin, Nigeria, Chile, and South Africa. Today, we're going to change things up a bit from yesterday in the sense that the order of the presentations will be different from the countries. So the countries that didn't present yesterday will get a chance to present first today. So that is mainly the French-speaking colleagues. The format of the session will provide for the presentations to be made and then for us to engage with these presentations in the form of questions and answers. And towards the end, we're going to have breakout session, providing for peer-to-peer engagement and conversations with colleagues in the same room on the public participation initiatives that they are undertaking. We hope this is going to motivate others that perhaps have not started yet to think about undertaking similar initiatives and to assist those that are already in the middle of these initiatives to formulate ideas for perhaps overcoming challenges or assisting each other with peer learning. In this breakout session, we will specifically ask stewards to discuss amongst themselves what challenges they are facing on identifying public participation initiatives to start in their countries. Are they having issues in identifying what the purpose of this participation is meant to be? What are the objectives? Have they already identified and planned for the interventions that are going to meet these objectives? And lastly, but very important, what are the lessons that they are learning along the way? How can these lessons help other countries not fall into the same traps perhaps? And together, how can we brainstorm on ideas for overcoming these challenges? So it is indeed a very full agenda. And without further delay, I'm going to pass the floor to Shruti. There will be time for Q&A, so please note down any questions that you may have as she is presenting, and then we can address them with her. Without further ado, the floor is yours, Shruti. Thank you.
Thank you. And perhaps the PPT can be up. Thank you. So as in the introduction, this presentation and note is based on mainstreaming citizen engagement in public financial management for better results. And along with my co-author Saki and Helen, we just want to thank GIFT for inviting us to present in this very important forum and to learn from other experiences how they are doing it, other country experiences. Next slide, please. Bank has been promoting public participation in public financial management for some time now, through trust funded project, through bank loans, etc. So when this is basically a DEX-based research, and when we started this research, when we started talking to the task team leader, we quickly realized that there is a need to give some format, some technical guidance on various stages of public participation in the PFM, as well as what is the objective for it at different stages for it, and how to do it to address that niche, address this demand. We have in this note come up with this specific stages of public participation in the PFM cycle. Next slide, please. According to this note, what we are saying is there could be different stages depending on where the country is, where the country's preferences are, what's the context, amount of funding available. The countries and the policymakers, task team leader in the bank, they need to first identify what is the purpose of citizen engagement in the PFM cycle. Is it to inform citizens, a public at large, about the budget process, about the allocation, about the actual expenditure, about the audit results, about the scrutiny results? Is it that they want to do? Is it consult? Is consult meaning is it's a two-way street. It's basically when you are putting that information down, you are getting feedback. As a result, you are doing something with that information. Either you are adjusting your allocation, or you are using that monitoring, budget implementation monitoring, to better service delivery outcome. So that's our consult, where it's a two-way communication. Are you collaborating? Are you actually inviting citizens, CSOs, think tanks, etc.? Are you inviting them to do public expenditure monitoring with you? Are you inviting them to do a performance audit with you? That's collaborate. Empower is it's what's happening a lot these days in many parts of the world, is where we are doing actually giving them power to decide on allocation. When they are actually deciding on allocation, on budget, how the money gets to be spent. So that's the empower. So this is where we are starting. When any policymaker is starting at the budget process, they need to figure this out, we find. And this objective setting is very important. Next slide, please. This is also we have written, and we also want to highlight while presenting that evidence of this, that how it's happening, and most importantly, the impact. Why should a country do public participation in the PFM system? Does it actually improve tax collection? These kind of evidence of public participation that it's working, it's very important to cite. Very important for this advocacy purposes, to the task team leader, to the policymakers in government, etc. And also very important to come to bring together this international initiatives and standards for PFM, like GIFT. And also we wanted to jot down some of the lessons learned from World Bank support on PFM in different countries. Next slide, please. So we have divided PFM cycle and citizen engagement as such into this 5 stages. And this also gave us some framework to actually talk about these cases in details, the how, the nitty-gritty, the process, etc. So the purpose of describing those details, the country experiences, we have divided the PFM cycle into 4 stages. At first stage, fiscal law and policy design. This is not an annual process. This happens only once for a particular policy, or when they are doing some fiscal laws as decision making, where the countries are in the Ministry of Finance is inviting public participation for some discussion on that particular fiscal law or decision making. Then the rest 4 happens annually. Budget formulation, the enactment. Here Parliament plays an important role, and Parliament is inviting public participation in that process. So that's budget enactment. Then the next stage is implementation, accounting, reporting, and the last stage is external scrutiny and audit. And also we wanted to see this from these lenses, from the transparency lens, accessibility lens, where is this public participation? Who are participating? Is it just for the people who are the national language or English speaking elite think tank group? Is it just for them? Are there special provision for women, special provision for other marginalized part of the other marginalized citizen, etc.? That accessibility. If it's just about internet, you are doing it through internet. Is the internet access a problem? If that is it an access issue, or it's actually hindering for many people to participate in that feedback through website, etc.? The timeliness, it's very important when citizens are providing feedback. At what point are you asking for that feedback? Is it actually making any difference? Because if for the first time, think tank CSOs, public at large providing feedback for your budget process, and if you are not using it the second time, they will not come, and the budget process will not, and this public participation process will not be a success. Multiple engagement channels and tools. Depending on where you are, what is your preference, what are the different mix of tools and processes that you are using, and I'll go into the details in next couple of minutes. Very important, sustainability and scale. Is it part of a international INGO or international development organizations process? They provided the funding, and then once they left, this process doesn't go forward. So the sustainability, uptake, it's very, very closely related, that government has a plan to sustain it for years and years to come. And at what scale are you doing it? And closing the feedback loop, citizen budget, putting it out there, that's not public participation. So closing the feedback loop, using that information is also very important. And then government ownership and reciprocity. Next slide, please. So here, this is very important, that enabling environment. We wanted to check what are the legal frameworks that helping this public participation in the budget process, in transparency, GovTech, Civic Tech, budget literacy. Are those places in play? Are those things are in place and not? And then again, this inform, consult, collaborate, and empower. There are many, many examples of how these things are done. What are the mechanisms in this note? I will pick up very quickly just few of these examples and then just walk through them. Next slide, please. This is phase 2, budget formulation, where World Bank was supporting a few districts in Cameroon in different states. But here we want to point out that just disclose, and this is a citizen budget initiative, and how a citizen budget initiative promote public participation in the budget process. So here, publishing just citizen budget is not public participation. Though simplifying that information, having money, spending effort and money to disseminate it using different channels, seeking, making sure that people are using that information to understand and analyze the budget, and providing a forum for discussion with think tanks and CSOs and CBOs, etc., so that they can give feedback and then use it. And closing this loop is very important at this stage of budget formulation. Next slide, please. Sorry. And then this is basically where we are saying budget formulation and empowering citizen. In Mexico, when this the experience of the government didn't have experience to manage large development funds, but they actually took the effort to consult with public citizens, and they voted how that money can be spent. Look at those numbers. Like there are 14 public meetings, 615 participants. So the point we're trying to make through this slide is that this process is complex. It takes a lot of effort. And that's when the real public participation actually comes in, and you are empowering citizens. So keep that in mind while we are designing your policy. Next slide, please. The next slide is about this this enactment, and parliamentarians here, they through their committees are inviting people for citizen feedback when they are scrutinizing the budget. And here important tool is parliamentary budget offices. They are actually putting out an analysis so that others, the CSOs, the sectoral think tanks, they can use that information. And also empowering parliaments, helping them analyze the budget. So this is, Parliament is the key player here, and these are some of the tools for this particular phase. Next slide, please. In this slide, we in this phase, phase 4, when this budget is actually being implemented, we are seeing a lot of citizen participation, either using traditional tools like PETs, but then what we picked up is that citizen participation in procurement monitoring and actual contract monitoring. But for that to happen, we really need to invest in capacity, because because this data, using this data to analyze this data, you need very specific capacity. And also government should publish this procurement data. There are various data standards that governments can adhere to. Many governments are actually doing it. So publishing that data, then the targeted capacity building is one of the 2 things that we want to really highlight. But once done, it really improves the budget implementation process. Next slide, please. Then external audit. Here, we all know here that audit also has its own cycle, and different stages of audit citizen can participate. But when we supported Nepal's OAGN, what we have seen is at times OAGN are actually involving citizen in doing performance audit. But it takes a lot of effort. Again, it's a multi-year effort. You have to form this multi-stakeholder group. You have to sensitize OAG and what CSOs are. This is not a monolithic organization. There are different types of CSOs, because that you have to build that trust among size. On the CSO side also, you have to train them, saying that what is this audit report, because it's very technical. Then there needs to be some guidance manual, and also the legal aspect, whether the law allows external auditor to involve citizen. But again, a big process in there. And finally, I just want to conclude by saying, next slide, please. Moving 3 key messages from this note, that moving beyond transparency, that don't think that transparency is participation. There is a lot of miles to travel, and so moving beyond transparency is very important, and this is happening. Transparency is the foundation, but government needs to invest much more in more than just publishing the documents. Inclusive budget literacy is also very important, and prioritize and sequence. Figure out where you are, how much funding you have, what is your objective, how much political will you have, and then either you engage the general public for getting feedback, public at large, or then engage with small, select and specialized CSOs, think tanks to do in-depth. You can do both, but prioritizing and sequencing is very, very important. And in the final slide, I just wanted to say in today's time, many governments are actually publishing a lot of information on COVID-19. So how can CSOs actually, or think tanks, use this information to track the amount of fund that's going through an emergency response project? That could be a cornerstone for public and citizen engagement in the budget process in times to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are correct. It is indeed about how do we move from transparency or beyond transparency towards getting effective public participation. Do we have any questions for Shruti? I know yesterday there were quite a few that we couldn't get to. Are any of those participants perhaps in the room? Everyone's very quiet today. Okay, so I think let's then move on to the Brazilian experience. Daniel Avelino, if you can please present that to us, it would be great. Thank you.
Thank you all. First of all, let me thank Gift for this invitation. I'm really glad to share some informations and some insights with you. Let's think of it as an exchange of experiences. I would like to share my screen just in a minute. Okay, and let's go for it. I would like to talk a little bit about the public participation through the Brazilian experience. I have selected some cases for us to discuss, but also some lessons that we can pull out of them. Going directly into it, these are the cases. Brazil has a lot of experiences in public participation, some better than others, but these ones here, they are really interesting because they have, they share a common characteristic of resilience. And this idea of resilience, that some experiences can endure despite the changes of government, would be useful for people who are trying to design some participatory mechanisms from the scratch. First of all, probably the most known participatory experience in Brazil is the participatory budgeting itself. Basically, it's a system of public consultation, starting from local assemblies and thematic assemblies that where people can point out what are their most urgent needs, and those proposals are then collected by a series of intermediary stances and converted into an investment plan, which the mayor can send to local legislature. The main idea behind participatory budgeting is understanding that government should not take by itself all the decisions in the budget processing. Instead, civil society and people in general can be given a voice in order to point out what are their most urgent needs, and hence deciding by themselves the prioritizing list of public investment. This is the idea that a collaboration and a co-creation during the budgeting processes can be most useful for all. The second experience are the national councils. Councils are permanent bodies created within the public administration and composed by both representatives of governmental and non-governmental organizations. In that sense, they can organize themselves and perform very specific functions as normative functions, oversight functions, or even advisory functions. In Brazil, we have some examples, as you can see here, from the public policies of health, where we can find a national council backed up by state councils, but also councils on local level. That means that a huge network of public agencies composed by civil society representatives is formed in order to promote and enhance support and advocacy for a specific public policy. The main idea behind the councils is that permanent bodies can make the difference, as they are formed and kept inside the public management structures. Those bodies can act as capacity building instances in which the participants can learn a lot by practice about the bureaucracy and the legal framework of the public policy, but also as they work from within, there are also excellent agencies for monitoring and oversight, as they can have full access to information and they can perform their functions on a continuous, permanent way. Third experience are the national conferences. National conferences basically is the idea of a huge, massive process of consultation, of public consultation, organized on a territorial basis. That means that a set of local consultation events, we call the municipal conferences or local conferences, they happen at the same time in the totality of the national territory. And those local conferences select a few proposals and a few representatives to be united, gathered lately on state conferences. And so on, they also send proposals and representatives to the national step of the conference. The main idea behind the national conference is the insight that consultative processes can be organized in a systematic way in order to have some more specific and local consultations, reinforcing and supporting more general and larger scales of consultation processes. This idea also makes us think about the role of territory into the public participation initiatives. We know that some initiatives of public consultation tends to be more focused on larger cities or regions that are already overrepresented in the legal and the representative political system. So if we can manage to have some specific consultation processes throughout the entirety of the territory, specifically the country land, the countryside of the territory, that could bring some kind of different inputs that otherwise would be silenced. And finally, I would like to share the initiatives of the national system of hearing offices. Brazil has a large number of hearing offices, but so far they have been working on a very fragmented way. That means each national agency was taking care of their own demands. When all of these entry points have been organized into a national system, the information gathered by them took a national and a bigger scale. Individual demands that are presented to our hearing offices can be treated, also answered, they can find a response, but they also are aggregated into more specific, into more significant reports. And those reports can be shared with the specific manager of that public policy in order to promote improvements or corrections or even auditing when needed. The idea here is that maybe we don't need to create new channels, but think different about the channels that already exist. Maybe integration, organization, and cooperation could be more important than creation and innovation itself. Well, now it's the time to share with you some lessons learned, not only from our good practices, but also from the mistakes that we have taken along the way. First, and probably the most important lesson here, is that public decision must be connected to a public participation process, and vice versa. That means that a public participation process which is not clearly connected to a public decision tends to be not only ineffective, but also frustrating. People must see clearly the path that their contributions and the inputs are going to take in order to influence a specific public decision. And let's not forget that public participation involves a huge investment, not only of public resources, but also of time, effort, and hope for all people involved. And we should, in a fair way, make good use of those investments. Also, it's important to consider existing initiatives, already existing initiatives. not only in government, but also in civil society, in the context, in the culture of civil society itself. That means context matters. If we have the engagement of civil society in our initiatives, in our innovation, in our public participation processes, we also should take our time and spend some time getting to know what's already being done. When we ignore the civil society culture and the civil society initiatives, we can create unnecessary concurrence, unnecessary competition between those spaces, which is not useful for anyone. Also, it's really important to compensate inequalities. Every public participation process is biased, tends to benefit more one group or another. So we should not expect to be neutral, and we do not pretend to be neutral, but instead we should take care and select carefully which kind of groups should be promoted or supported by that specific public participation processes. Most vulnerable people, most marginalized people should be the preferential target for initiatives that promote and foster public participation. Also, it's important to institutionalize as soon as possible. Those experiences from Brazil that I shared with you, they can be considered well successful because they were institutionalized, either in law or even in our constitutional chart. That means it's okay to start a public participation process as innovation, as something new, but remaining at that status forever also means that this process can be easily postponed or easily destroyed when governments change. We should think about resilience and sustainability of those processes. And finally, we should not forget to monitor and evaluate every step of the way. That's the only way that we can find, that we can discover if we are doing this right. We must think about indicators. We must think again about the goals and the purpose of those processes. Where do we want to reach? And just to make it a little bit easier, the best and most intuitive indicator of success of a public participation practice still is the attendance, which means the public support that society are sharing with the government itself. When we see an empty room, when we see an empty assembly, when we see an empty council or an empty audience, we can say for sure that this process is not working well. Well, the GIFT website has a lot of all other cases. I would suggest you to spend some time browsing the guide to public participation in the site of GIFT, and more of Brazilian experience is already documented there. I will stop here. Maybe we can discuss a little bit of those topics later, and wishing you a really healthy and productive day of discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Daniel. That was very informative, and I think it is key that people read those cases that are made available because they provide a variety of lessons for all of us to learn in moving forward on this, territory that is largely unknown to a great many people. Are there any questions for Daniel?
I have.
Go ahead, Juan Pablo.
Thank you. Both for Shruti and Daniel, two questions. The first one is on all of the resistance Daniel, you were just talking about resilience, how important it is to have mechanisms for sustainability of these efforts. So all of this resistance that there is on public participation within bureaucracies and within governments, what are the main arguments against it? If you could also talk about those challenges. And the second question refers to capacity building. I remember when I used to advance the right to information, the right to know, that we would put everything prepared, that we would make sure, while I was an information commissioner in Mexico, that agencies would provide the information, but they were obliged by law, but many public servants didn't know how. And there was a whole process involved about creating records and about managing records that wasn't evident. So in public participation, I am sure that the challenges for institutions is also great. So could you elaborate also on the capacity building and training on both sides of the Bureau, government and civil society? Thank you.
You can go ahead, Daniel, and then Shruti can add.
Okay. I will share the screen again. We have some really good questions here. Juan Pablo, regarding the first question, I would highlight again this idea of institutionalization. Bureaucracy can be a huge source of resistance because public participation is a change in culture. And any kind of change in culture can tends to be resisted by bureaucracy, who really likes predictability and repetition. But if we but also we have to see maybe the good side of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, when well established, they tend to have the rule of the law as a very cherished value. They are organized around the value of the rule of the law. So if we can manage to put public participation into the law, into the institution itself, maybe we can do the reverse, make bureaucracy work in favor of public participation and as a factor of resilience for already established initiatives of public participation. We have seen in Brazil, as in any place, bureaucracy resisting against implementation of public participation initiatives. But on the other side, when those initiatives are already well established into the law, into the constitution, bureaucracy can be one of the most valuable defenders of public participation itself as part of the procedure, not only because it's good or because it promotes democracy, but sometimes just because it's part of the procedure and they really care about the procedural rules being followed. And about the idea of capacity building, I would again highlight here the important role played by permanent instances and permanent mechanisms of public participation. Regarding the information, access to information and information share, we face in public government every day the challenge that maybe information does not exist, or information is not organized, or information is not cared about enough to be recorded, to be registered. In that sense, when we manage to create specific and permanent spaces of public participation, such as the national councils in Brazil, they can see it by themselves. They can face it. They can live it. They can they can observe the situation happening in their everyday life, and not only ask for more information, demand more information, or go into justice to have access to information, but also come up with some ideas and proposals to improve the generation of information itself, the whole process of information management and also information production. So maybe one way to get out of this impasse, get out of this stalemate, is the idea of creating more permanent internal structures of public participation. That should be my first thoughts on the subject, but maybe we can discuss more lately. Thank you. That's it.
I think indeed it is a topic that requires quite a bit of discussion, but the idea of getting permanent spaces there that don't depend on particular personalities, being in the Ministry of Finance or in government is key to ensuring that it is also sustainable over the longer term. I think now we can move on to the presentation from Sierra Leone. So our colleagues from Sierra Leone, if you are ready to present, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And just for introduction again, my name is Abubakar Kamara, and I work for the Budget Advocacy Network and in Sierra Leone. I get to me? Hello?
You seem to be, your connection seems to be cutting out a little bit.
Okay.
We can see your presentation. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. And just as a context, this whole process of budget discussion in Sierra Leone started when the Government Budget and Accountability Act was passed. But even prior to this, we have a long brutal war, and there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and so many reasons.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think we've got the wrong screen on. Would you like us to share the presentation from our side? Oh, there it's back.
There it's back,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead. Sorry to...
Is the wrong presentation I have on? Oh, okay. Okay, are you seeing it now?
Yes, we're seeing it now. Thank you.
Okay, so it all started around that. So in 2005, we have Government Budget and Accountability Act, which among other things has issues that have to do with citizen participation in the budget process. And then within that same period again, the medium-term expenditure framework was developed, which clearly spelled out how citizens should participate and what's expected of them in terms of deciding what the country resources will be. So, of course, as part of the medium-term expenditure framework, the Minister of Finance is expected to send to all ministry, department, agencies what they call budget call circular, which provide a guideline in terms of what the ministries are supposed to do in preparing a budget. And in this guideline, again, they make provision for MDAs to actually bring in other interest groups in terms of developing their budget. So just fast forward, we have the budget, the Public Financial Management Act and its regulation, Again, it provides more basis and more space for citizens to participate. And because of that, again, the Medium Term Expenditure Framework was revised. And the revised Medium Term Expenditure Framework make provision for pre-budget discussion with MDAs. So before coming to the bigger platform, citizens, CSOs can engage the MDAs in terms of what they intend to do. So of course, again, even the budget call circular, issued by Minister of Finance, again, creates more space for citizens to engage. In fact, they requested the MDAs that they should invite other stakeholders to participate in the internal budget discussion process. So all this space has actually been provided for citizens to actually ensure that they make their input into the government budget. But all of this is geared towards ensuring that citizens are given the opportunity to express their views on what government intend to do, on what service delivery they expect government to do, or what development initiative the government to do. So that's one of the reasons this whole process has been set up. And it's also geared to ensure that those inputs and comments and suggestions that have been made by diverse groups in the society are actually incorporated into the national budget. So in all of this, one of the things that make us start to participate in the process was because we have the legal and regulatory framework. Of course, we make it mandatory for citizens to participate in the budget discussion and policy hearing process. So for us, that is very much key because it provides a platform, provide a legal platform for citizens to participate. So it doesn't only left on the hands, for example, the Minister of Finance discretion. Because there is no law, there to be at the discretion of Minister of Finance. They will invite who they want and when they want to invite you. But now there is a legal process. And in doing this now, we've seen the Ministry of Finance now making radio and television announcements at least a week before the budget discussion, calling citizens to come up with ideas, to come up with suggestions in terms of what the respective ministry, department, agencies intended to do. So for Sierra Leone, we have a CSO that focus on PFM issues. So they are taking the lead in terms of mobilizing other CSOs that are not engaged in PFM issues, but has something to do with requiring something to do with ensuring that the Minister of Finance or the respective MDA finances certain service delivery which they want in their community or in their town. So we've seen that over the years, the policy and budget discussion have grown. Because initially it was just ministries and departments and agencies. But now we now see parastatals and even state-owned enterprises and local council all part of the discussion. It's interesting to know that, for example, even the commercial banks that are state-owned, they also go part of the process and discuss all their policies, how much profit they intend to make, and the citizens have the platform to ask questions in terms of how they are carrying out their various operations under the budget. So as part of the process, the policy hearing normally it lasts for 1, 2, or 3 days. This is the platform wherein the ministries come and engage the public on the policies they want to do. And it also provides an opportunity for them to explain on the previous policies, how far they have gone in implementing the previous policy. So it provides an opportunity for us to understand the direction in which government is going and provide a platform for us to make input into that particular process. The other good thing about this particular whole process is that it provides a whole range of opinion in terms of what they want the respective ministries to do. For example, the marginalized group, the HIV group, the farmer, disability. This platform has provided a space for them to actually engage respective ministries, department agencies. So for us, what we are doing in country as a CSO platform, we knew that some of these marginalized groups might not have the capacity to actually translate their issues into a way that it can be factored into the budget. So what we do normally, we organize meetings with them where we itemize all the issues they want the budget to factor, and we facilitate meetings for them to engage in respective ministry department agencies prior to the bigger budget discussion. So even before the ministry present their budget, they have engaged them in terms of what they want to see factored. So the bigger budget discussion platform will now just be a platform to actually confirm whether the issues have been captured, or if they are not captured, we'll try to raise them again. The good thing about this bilateral budget discussion is that it provides an opportunity for citizens to understand the previous resources, how it has been spent, and what they intend to do in the following year. And in such situations, citizens have the opportunity to ask a question in terms of how have they implemented certain program previously. Just as an example, like 3 or 4 years ago, the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, they were presenting their previous year budget, and a huge sum of resources was presented for refurbishing of government quarters. And interestingly, someone that reside in that particular quarter was in that meeting. So it raised objection as to the type of rehabilitation has been done. So what this has provided for us as CSO is that it provides us an opportunity to actually check and confirm what this MDAs, whether they are presenting, whether it's correct or not. So it's also provided accountability platform for us to know what has been done in previous years and what they intend to do. Of course, the other good thing is that the presentation from this institution, the public can ask questions, make observations, and even make suggestions. We have instances wherein activities that were not planned for by the respective MDAs before going to the public discussion were factored, because citizens are able to also analyze and bring on board issues which they think is of beneficiary to the nation, is of beneficiary to their community. So in doing all of this, we still have some challenges, and one of it has to do with limited information. Prior to the meetings. If documents for discussion are presented at the doorstep of the meetings, so of course it makes it difficult for us to go through all of those huge document, budget, and expenditure and make critical comments at that particular meeting. So that's why in going forward, we have been calling on the Minister of Finance to find a way in which we can have access to those information prior to the budget discussion. The other challenge we face is the limited feedback on how inputs are actually being used. Because every year we go there, we have discussions, citizens make input, they make comment, they make some certain suggestions, but we do not have a platform wherein we're going to get a feedback that will clearly show these are the issues that you raise, these are the issues that we address, these are the issues that we are not addressed, and these are some of the reasons. So that one, it feels really limited. And the other one has to do with the capacity of us, we as CSOs, in terms of engaging the MDs on critical technical issues. Because there are certain MDs, there are some of the issues they are presenting that are so more technical. So if we as CSO representing people who are not that much technical, so interrogate this issue, then it will be a problem for us in terms of making meaningful inputs. So in doing all of this, what we learned is that citizen participation has brought diverse views into the budget process, and this helped to shape the agenda of the government in terms of the service delivery they want to do, in terms of the direction they are going, in terms of how much has been invested and where that investment is going. And of course, again, the discussion is providing a platform and a channel for those that are neglected in the society, for them to bring their issues on board so that it can be factored into the budget. And of course, one of the things we learned here ensuring that we have a formidable CSOs group working mainly on PFM. So they help in mobilizing other groups like the vulnerable group, the marginal, and other stakeholders. And this has led to the increase in citizen interest in terms of the budget process in Sierra Leone. So just lastly, my last slide in terms of going forward for other countries. For us, we are lucky we have the legal and regulatory framework. So for those countries that do not have, it's very much important for them to start to look at getting a legal and regulatory framework, that will guarantee citizens' right in the participation to the budget process. Otherwise, it will just be left at the discretion of the respective ministry leading that particular process. Of course, there is a need for CSOs to constantly follow up the budget discussion timeline to ensure that the government adhere to its regulatory framework. Because what we learned in relation to this is that, I mean, the budget goes through the various timelines, and each timeline is important, especially in terms of preparation to go and have discussion around the budget. So if we do not follow through the timeline, and then we miss certain moments, they will not be able to prepare well to engage effectively on the budget discussion process. Because the last one, of course, has to do with the Minister of Finance, of course, need to take leadership in creating the space for citizens to participate. And this will bring the aspect of the legitimacy in the process. Because when there's legitimacy in the process, citizens feel that the budget is their ideas, and therefore they will follow up to ensure that those ideas translate into service delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is very valuable advice to give, and I also suspect a lot of the challenges that you're facing would be faced by many others in the room as well. I don't see Matthew Dingy in the room, so I think we will just get your perspective this evening from a CSO perspective, but I think it gives a lot of the lessons learned and a lot of the challenges. So I think we quite well covered. So thank you very much for that great presentation. Are there any questions on the Sierra Leone experience?
Raquel, this is Vivek.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, and hello everyone, and thank you to the GIFT team for giving us this opportunity to be part of the discussion. I have a question for Bakar based on what he presented on the different sort of ways by which civil society organizations are now using the pre-budget consultation processes to provide their inputs to the MDAs in Sierra Leone. Bakar, could you give us some specific examples or the types of issues that CSOs have taken up with the government through these forums, and whether any of them, especially any prominent suggestions made by CSOs, were then reflected in the government's budget?
Thank you very much, Vivek. And one concrete example we'll give is, for example, the elders, the elderly people. You know, year after year, normally they just rely on donation, those good-hearted people to give them certain support. But what we did was that we bring a cross section of them together, and they itemize all their issues in terms of the constraints they are facing as elderly. And of course, we identify the institution responsible to provide our services, which is the social welfare ministry. So then what we do, we facilitate a meeting between them and the Minister of Social Welfare. So they have direct engagement in terms of explaining what their constraints, what they need, and how the budget can be used to alleviate some of their suffering. And at the end of it, we now have a budget line for the elderly people in Sierra Leone. So now they now have a budget line under the Ministry of Social Welfare, which is now being used to provide basic needs for them. Another example has to do with under the Ministry of Agriculture. The ministry they have a research unit under the ministry. After they have done their presentation, a brilliant citizen stood up and raised a concern around investing in onion. And interestingly, the person did a whole lot of research in terms of how much government is subsidizing importing onion to Sierra Leone, and it's over $10 million per year. And it suggested that there's a need for that research institution to actually conduct the economic viability of government investing in onion production. So that research was done, and the following year, government has now started providing resources for various farmers groups to invest in, to actually plant onion, which is being used almost in all cooking in Sierra Leone. Another example I have has to do with the HIV people. We have the HIV Secretariat here that is normally providing services, but the services they are providing is not enough. So again, they approach us since we have been leading the process, and there's that bilateral discussion, and itemize all of the things, and we engage all the partners responsible for providing service for HIV. So what we did was, we again facilitate discussion with them, and then at the end, each of these various sectors now provide resources in terms of addressing the basic needs of the HIV people. The same thing happened for the albinos. The albinos, because they were like almost neglected. Their drugs were never been imported in Sierra Leone, but because they have direct engagement and they were able to clearly present the issue themselves with the ministries, now they have started importing drugs for them, which they are now using in Sierra Leone. So these are just examples wherein public participation into the budget has actually incorporated citizens' ideas and is now working.
Thank you for those valuable examples, and thank you for your presentation once again. If now we can move on to the feedback from the different countries. Can we start with Senegal? Mordio from the Ministry of Finance, if you can please go ahead and give us a brief update on the process in Senegal. Thank you. I wonder if you can hear us, Mordio from Senegal. Okay, perhaps let's move on to Benin and then we can come back. Huisen from Benin, can you please take the floor? I wonder if the interpretation is working.
Let me address them in French.
Thank you.
Bonjour, mes amis francophones.
Good morning, my Francophone friends from Senegal and Benin. It is now time for you to present. I know that you have issues with connectivity, and I am in touch with some of you, but could you please activate your microphone and give your brief presentations, and we will see if we can hear you, despite the difficulties that you might be having with the technical side of things. So Mr. Diouf from Senegal, or Dieudonné Huisson from Benin.
I see them.
Yes, they're definitely in the room. I wonder if we should move quickly to Chile and then try again in the meantime.
Yes.
Okay. Chile,
Thank you,
Amaya. Thank you. Amaya, if you could please go ahead together with Jeanette, good to see you. If you could please give us the perspectives from the Ministry of Finance, and Jeanette, if you could please give us the perspective from a CSO. Jeanette is from the Fundación Observatorio del Gasto Fiscal de Chile. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Hello, good morning. My name is Amaya Freire. I'm the Director of the Modernization of the State Secretariat at the Ministry of Finance in Chile. And we're very grateful in Chile, in the Ministry, for this invitation. So I have a very brief presentation I want to share with you. First, in terms of public participation, the most important thing is a law that it was implemented in 2011. This law gives the citizens the possibility of becoming part of the decision-making process through 4 different mechanisms. And the most important one is the civil society councils. This, well, what the law states is that basically each government agency has a council formed by members of NGOs and the civil society, basically. So we have lots of these councils and they really make important contributions. Also, also in the Ministry of Finance, over the past year, we have focused greatly on transparency, and that has been really enhanced because of the current COVID crisis. Some of our initiatives include, first is the Open Budget platform. This is a very important platform that really shows every transaction from the central government. You can find information about the assigned resources, public resources, how each thing has been bought. You can even see like the tickets and everything. And you can access in presupuestoabierto.cl. Also, starting this year, we made a taxpayer report. That was a huge improvement. People were like really happy. This was a contribution that was suggested by a committee, a transparency committee that we have in the ministry, that Janet is the president, and she's going to explain it afterward. And you can see how all your taxes were used by the government. So it's very important in terms of transparency and trying to involve like people. On the other hand, because of the crisis, we also made a platform to try to inform every single measure that we were like taking part of and that involved some budget. So that's in the webpage of the Ministry of Finance, and it's reported at hacienda.cl. On the other hand, because of the crisis as well, we try to grow and make transparent every single purchase that it was made because of the crisis. So we also create a Power BI platform with all the different purchasing process that were, it's similar to the one of the open budget, but it's more focused on, it's only focused on COVID purchases, and it's open to the public. So now on behalf of the Public Spending Council, Janet will continue the presentation.
Thank you very much, Janet. If you can please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency for the invitation and for sharing and hearing, learning from each other worldwide. I'm from an NGO working for fiscal transparency, but now I will be speaking as Amaya from the Finance Ministry said, being on charge of a public committee for fiscal transparency. In fact, it was end of the year that we built up this committee in Chile with 16 persons, independent, autonomously from the government, with political diverse sensibilities, and also from civil society. We are gender diverse, very important for us, and we have members from diverse think tanks. We have 2 ex-congressmen that were very important on that time. We started together with the former finance minister from the former government. And now in our commission, there is the former budget director as well. And we have experts on concessions and also on public enterprises. And as I already said, civil society, Transparency International, Espacio Público, and our observatory. We are together the most active civil society members working for transparency and anti-corruption in Chile. So we started in January with the aim to advise the implementation of budget reforms that would aim to bring more transparency and public participation in the budget cycle. And we try to work closely with the finance ministry, and our recommendation, in fact, we already made are 100% unanimous. We think bringing diverse voices together and making unanimous recommendation regarding fiscal transparency is our objective, and what we hopefully bring into the public discussion, and to help the finance ministry to go on that issues. We have until now no administrative support from the finance ministry. We're just 16 persons working voluntary with during 1 year with a lot of consciousness regarding the huge opportunity on for Chile to advance on fiscal transparency and public participation. I just read that yesterday the World Business Council on Sustainable Development launched a future vision for the world, and one of the most important future visions they say is public participation in fiscal matters. So we are convinced of that. But what is our experience right now? I will start with the negative one and to end with the positive, of course. In fact, it is not easy to build a participatory committee if government still has no real participatory culture. And this is, I think, the case of the Chilean government, and not just of this Chilean government, but of government in Chile in general, starting with good intentions to build up a committee autonomously from the actual finance ministry. That was really positive signal. But I think now our finance ministry realized that having an autonomous commission making recommendation and acting also as a kind of watchdog over necessary transparency reforms, we're not so rose-smelling as they thought when we were created, maybe. And maybe they feel we are not really useful for the agenda of the government. Maybe especially during the crisis now in Chile, the finance ministry is also focused more on the short run. And I see also elections are coming. So our commission already made very detailed recommendations on fiscal transparency and also transparency of the extra budget funds, the tool our finance ministry is proposing to Congress in response to the crisis. We also saw that the finance ministry implemented already one of our recommendations regarding a specialized, personalized accountability to each taxpayer. Amaya from the finance ministry already showed to you. That was really positive. But beside that, most recommendations of us are being ignored or not even responded. And I think hopefully this could be changed to go more to a collaborative culture, because I think it's not political blindness, but maybe just this culture that a finance ministry with all the power that means is not really used to share some of this power with stakeholders. And meanwhile, I must say, we also see that on international budget survey, the open budget survey, Chile is falling behind in fiscal transparency and participatory issues. So there's a lot to move on, and this is our inspiration, and still will be like this. The good aspect I want to end with, we bring some lessons for independent financial institutions, I think, because I know IFEs are non-participant public bodies aimed to promote sustainable public finance. They have normally different functions, including monitoring, compliance of fiscal rules, production of macroeconomic forecasts and for the budget, or general advice to the government regarding fiscal issues. Normally, they do not give normative advice, and I want to focus on that because I think in our commission, we see our function in some kind as a special function, a new function of an independent financial institution. And we are in that sense not analyzing the budget. We are not making forecasts. We are not preparing the parliamentary debate. We just make continuously recommendations on transparency and participation as a non-partisan public body. And this is very important function, I think, and I hope future architecture of IFEs could consider. This is the message, in fact, I wanted to give to you, giving all the particular interests on government, on public spending, giving all the corruption risks and the corruption we have in our governments. This should be part of the architecture of independent fiscal institutions to make recommendations continuously on fiscal transparency and public participation. Hopefully this could also enter in the debate and in the recommendations of OECD and the FMI, because I see they still focus more on the traditional IFEI architecture, and it would be very interesting to consider this function as part of the architecture. In direction what we heard from the Brazilian experience, there must be a planning and architecture to make continuously recommendation on participatory processes, and I think on fiscal transparency as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeanette and Amaya, for giving us those different views from the different sides of the coin. I suppose there are challenges that are faced from both ends, and there are lessons to be learned from both sides, in the way going forward. But it's in these kind of conversations and the robust discussions between the different groups that we together come up with solutions and move forward. So thank you very much for being open with us. If we can then try again with Senegal or Benin. Monsieur Diouf. Okay, I'm not sure what is going on there. Perhaps then we can move to Dr. Anne.
Janet, sorry, Raquel, while we still give them a chance, on vous attend.
Oh. We're waiting for you. We're still waiting for you, my dear colleagues. If you could activate your microphone, let me...
Take 1 minute to express my acknowledgement and appreciation to Amaya Fraile and Janet von Walderworf, because of the very frank dialogue with the challenges that they face and the advantages that they see that they shared with us, because this is really what expresses, I believe, one of the strengths and one of the advantages of working in an international, professional, respectful context, such as the one we try to create as GIFT. This conversation is very relevant for us, not only to witness, but also to be part of. What I would like to underline in the case of Chile is that although there are challenges, Chile has been, and I say it as a Mexican, a very effective state, able to provide public services and to address citizens' needs in a way that is exemplary from the Latin American perspective. From that point of view, open up to civil society is no doubt a challenge. And I believe that they have been addressing the issue lately much more than in the past. So this is something that I would like to underline. Of course, it is related to a very strong social mobilization that we all witnessed last year. And in that role, Observatorio Fiscal, and particularly our dear friend Janet, had a very important role to establish the commission and to establish the settings for a productive, constructive dialogue. In that dialogue, you always have some frustrations, some backlashes, and some advances. And I also must acknowledge the patience from both sides. I wanted to point this out and thank both for your openness and your frankness, because again, from outside, even if sometimes it seems that slowly, you've done a great step forwards towards a much more open dialogue on budget issues in your country.
Yes, indeed. I think
Janet, go ahead.
Good work.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. In fact, the dialogue between civil society and Chilean Finance Ministry is far away from being perfect, but I must recognize that we have at least some kind of dialogue, and we had steps forward regarding the budget transparency website from the Finance Ministry Amaya showed. So there are steps forward, but I just wanted to point out the huge opportunity if we could work better together, because from civil society, this is what we want. This is in fact not criticism, but some kind of invitation for the Finance Ministry to go ahead. We made steps forward. You're absolutely right, Juan Pablo. But regarding our social crisis, we must do much more innovation, and public participation in the budget cycle will be for us a very crucial element to get more trust in government, and will be a really important tool for our democracy. So this is one of our objectives in the Commission, and we really hope to work that together with the Finance Ministry. And together with the help of the Fiscal Transparency Network, of course.
We are here to help. Thank you. And learn.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Should we try... Juan Pablo, I'm not sure if you want to perhaps address in French and see our colleagues are ready.
I saw that you left the room and that you came back. Could you take the floor? I see Mr. Pirosigo, welcome. Mr. Mordiouf from Senegal, and our friend Dieudonné. Please go ahead. If one of you can take the floor, we would be most grateful.
No response. Let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Anne, can
Voilà Diouf. Voilà Mordiouf. Sorry.
Here's Mordiouf. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yes, good morning. We do hear you. We very well. Just to tell you, on our side, it's the beginning. With civil society, that we are finally able to set up the mechanism that would make it possible to have a view of public participation. Legally, we have a law on transparency for public expenditures, which requires the publication of certain information, requires more openness as regards communication. I think that we need to set or put in place a process that would make it possible to find at very specific intervals during the preparation, the execution, and when it comes to accountability, to really have a greater exchange with the public. So the will is there. The protocol was signed. I have sent you a copy, Mr. Juan Pablo. So what I wanted to say for the time being, that the process needs to be improved. We have entities that are working on fiscal matters, budgetary matters that have been identified. And so we will look at what mechanism can be used to have increased communication on fiscal matters. I would say that at the General Budget Office, at those sites, much information has been put online, but for greater efficiency, it would be better to encourage a more direct dialogue, public dialogue with the public. Very well. These are in general the comments I wanted to make and tell you that we are aware of this process and we will continue to improve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us that very useful update. I wonder if we could try Benin.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Pablo. Hello, welcome. Go ahead. Thank you so much. Apologies for the technical issues. It's a great pleasure for us to participate in these exchanges because it makes it possible for us to acquire new information and continue to build our citizen participation model. Citizen participation has a precondition according to our analyses, which is accessibility to budget and financial information. And in this regard, today, we note that the mechanism that is in place is efficient as regards making budgetary and financial information available and the possibility for the citizen, wherever he is or she, to have access to these documents. The channels that we normally use are ones that you know. It's a website devoted that is the Ministry of Economy and Finance on its site, have specific information that can be published for budgetary transparency. So this was what authorized the creation of this site, the DGP site, which is now updated and refreshed with financial and budgetary information. This is a first step. Second aspect is that we have tried to try to get our stakeholders used to what we do in the timeframes that we work in. So we reorganized the budget timeline to really emphasize the stages for citizen participation. That is, the times at which civil society can intervene in a useful way in the process and try to influence the government's positions, or perhaps adopt alternative positions within civil society. So this is something we've accomplished, and every year when the budget timeline is set, this is shared with civil society. Currently, we have developed a system that would make it possible that through this process, that these processes could be used, through a smartphone, remind the citizens of these stages so they can check them off, and so they can see how they can participate in this process with the public finance. And this is our process. Now, after the session that we had recently in South Africa, we understood that public participation has specificities that go beyond budgetary information or fiscal information. How the actors that intervene in this process are able to have decision-making power as regards resource allocation. So that's what we're trying to build right now through the government and through budgeting work. So when we decide what amount we assign to what activity or what performance is expected and to meet what challenge. So what is currently implemented in this regard is the development of sectorial budgetary notes that would present the challenges by sector and prepare the budgetary decision. That is why at this time we need this credit for this activity or for this other activity. And that's where CSOs, the ones that we work with and who have an easy contact with the ministry, they prepare reports on these sectorial activities. So during this phase of the work, they could insist that certain activities be taken into account rather than others, or perhaps adjust the proposals of credits that are going to be made to one activity or another. In this way, we are opening a window to CSOs so they can directly participate to framing and the distribution and the disaggregation of what is communicated in terms of an envelope to the sectorial ministries. What was mentioned in South Africa, which really reinforces what we've already started to do, and that has to do with the availability of school textbooks in French and maths in primary school establishments. It is thanks to the lobbying of civil society that we readjusted budget allocations so as to include these needs in that sector. So that is what we're doing today in an effort to improve the participation mechanism so that it can comply with international standards. And as regards citizen consultations in the budget framework, we have an official discussion space so that opinions can be collected, and in parallel with what has been done by the members of parliament in terms of budget activities. And so we also have this dialogue with citizens, with the man in the street. So this is what we have done in Benin, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad we overcame those technical challenges. I did notice that Social Watch, Hoiso, joined the meeting. Would you like to say a few words?
Oui,
Yes.
merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much.
J'ai été déconnecté tout le temps.
I keep getting disconnected, so I didn't hear Sego.
Merci Sego d'être venu.
Thank you, Sego, for having come.
C'est demain. Je n'ai pas du tout suivi.
But I didn't hear what you said. I'm so sorry.
De vous saluer tous,
I'm very happy to greet you all
de vous dire mon appréciation. Je ne prendrai pas
and to
beaucoup de temps,
express my
Pablo.
appreciation. I won't take a lot of time, Pablo.
Me taire en attendant. Oui, merci
I will
beaucoup.
just be quiet for now, and thank you so much. Thank you, Dieudonné Huisson, representative of civil society in Benin. Thank you, Mr. Sego. And thank you also, Mordiouf. We will continue with the meeting. We have other countries to listen to, but I want to really strongly emphasize the importance for us that despite the challenges, the difficulties, the great pressure under which your countries continue to supply or offer public services and execute the budget, despite all of this, you are continuing with efforts to find various channels to open the budgetary process or the fiscal process to the public. As regards the Ministry of Finance, its relations with other ministries, direct consultation using technological instruments and tools, and also the openness to following models from other countries. And so once again, we are continuing to work with you for this reason with great pleasure. And I thank you once again for your efforts and for your resilience, your insistence on continuing to pursue your efforts. And we can now see you, Dieudonné. Finally.
Thank you very much and great to see you. Oh, I see that was quite short, but thank you. It was good to see your face. Dr. Anne, my apologies for having cut you off a little earlier. Thank you for understanding. If you could please give us an update from Nigeria. I see your counterpart from civil society, Awal Musa from CIVLAC, is also in the room. So after you done giving us the government's perspective, Awal, you're most welcome to give us the perspective from civil society. We're excited to hear Nigeria's update. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. I don't know whether you want me to repeat what I said yesterday for the benefit of those who are not around, or to just go ahead and touch on a few challenges so that my colleague from civil society will get to speak. Yesterday, he was talking through me, so it would be nice to give him a little more time to talk than myself. But what I wanted to say is, I think, is it the person from Sierra Leone or Senegal, when they were talking about challenges they encounter with civil society. For us in Nigeria, especially with the multi-stake OGP concept that came into Nigeria from when our president signed it in 2016, it has brought a more cordial working relationship between the civil society and the government. Of course, there's always some hiccups here and there, depending on which civil society you engage in. You engage to, excuse me, to work with. But just about in every entire process right now, the ministry engages the the civil society people to work with us. In the budget process, we have their participation in the entire budget process. We are currently developing a national development plan for the country. And in fact, we are having this private sector drive it with all the 26 thematic groups that are established. We have civil society, private sector, academia, everybody is involved. So, but you know, some of these things, you don't expect a miracle overnight. It takes a while, it takes a process. Sometimes they think they don't have enough fair representation, but Rome is not built in a day. So we are advancing. I am very privileged with the CISLAC, who is highly known for fiscal transparency in the country, being the one that is working with us. And not just him, we have another civil society in the advisory group. And we intend to interact with more of them when we start having our discussion. We intend to incorporate more as observers as we go. But like I said yesterday, sometimes you don't want to stifle the process. Somebody said that I never do a committee of equal basis because sometimes it's difficult to break the ice. So Nigeria has come a long way working with civil society, and they have come a long way understanding and trying to trust the government. But we are not fully there, but we are getting there. Mr. Owl. Hello. Hello, Mr. Owl. I know he's online. Hello. Yes, we can hear you now. Okay. Please go ahead.
Ensure that transparency and accountability, and have some legal framework, that encourages public participation in government processes. For example, National Assembly in most of its bills deliberation, civil society are required, or rather non-state actors are required to participate and make input into any legal framework that the National Assembly is going to come. We have been at the level of civil society, we have been participating and make to ensure that government is coming up with has civil society input. And there are some number of legal framework that so far we have, which has civil society participation and inclusion in its runnings. For example, the Nigerian, EITI, that is Nigerian Structured Transparency Initiative, has civil society participation and representation because EITI is three, components. It has government, it has civil society, and companies. So civil society sits in the board to discuss and come up with recommendation and suggestion on how to run the EITI in Nigeria. Also, on the public procurement, even though government had not inaugurated the Public Procurement Council, civil society is supposed to be there to ensure transparency and accountability in the process. Also, with the government, signing up into open government partnership, civil society again is mandated, is mandatory for government to work with civil society to ensure that whatever processes government is following, civil society is there. of course, it has not been easy working with the government because we are dealing with long-standing suspicion between the civil society and government, because sometimes government, they will say something and they will not do thing, and civil society, don't find it, funny. So therefore, there's some level of civil society participation, but we think, it can be done better. In those days, we used to have, civil society participation in the pre-budget that will be sent to the National Assembly. But that process had actually stopped, and we hope that government will reactivate that, so that civil society can be making input, even before it gets to National Assembly. Because by the time it gets to the National Assembly, it's a different thing altogether. But before it is even sent to National Assembly, we will, be able to make, necessary observation, because sometimes you see a budget that is being sent to the National Assembly with duplication, waste, and completely not really usable budget line item for the students. So if we have such a concern for government to address it, but that has not continued, but we continue to advocate that the Ministry of Finance open up the budget process that will allow civil society to make a contribution. I think civil society, has been contributing to the government processes in many aspects, and that has really, created a better way of managing even the suspicion or the tension or the lack of cooperation between the both sides. There was an attempt to stifle civil society through enactment of law that will actually undermine civil society effectiveness. But we resisted that, and the National Assembly formally withdrew that bill, which will have restrict civic space. So we have succeeded in convincing the National Assembly and the government not to do that, because that will undermine democracy, and it will undermine the effective participation of the non-state actors in government processes. So that has been done. But specifically on the project, I think this is a very good opportunity to re-energize and synergize the cooperation that civil society are having with the government to ensure that public participation in government processes and governance generally, including the budget transparency, is expanded and given a much more consideration, so that the citizens can actually be involved in what is going on. They can participate, they can make concrete suggestions, they can also observe some of the issues that are not really in the best interest in government or in the country. And I can tell you that with the participation of civil society in various areas, recently the president signed beneficial ownership register law. Right now, I am in Lagos meeting with the different civil society and other stakeholders to discuss on how this law can be implemented and how civil society can contribute to ensuring that the beneficial ownership register would allow so many. In the past, lack of the beneficial ownership register has allowed so many people to do a lot of dubious work, including financing for terrorism, financing for illicit financial flow, and so many things. But with this law, coming on board, with civil society active participation, we will be able to reduce the instances of illicit financial flow, money laundering, and also so many, behavior of some companies that they pretend to be operating, but meanwhile they are actually doing a lot of things, including financing terrorism in the country. So this kind of relationship with civil society and government, if it can enhance, it can help, in terms of governance processes in the country. So I believe that this project is coming to help to expand the space for civil society inclusion in government, processes, and and we'll be able to deepen accountability. We'll be able to deepen, citizens' involvement in what goes on, rather than just them being reduced to just mere speculative. So I want to, once again, thank you very much for considering Nigeria to be part of this project. And we are learning, a lot from our colleagues. I've listened to the presentation by different countries. Of course, we have some similarities, but I think, as we continue to implement this project, we will be able to learn a lot and share our own experience as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Team Nigeria, for that wonderful update from Dr. Anne as well. And Awal, thank you for sharing your views with us. Last but not least, can we go to our dear Team South Africa? So Prue and Zuki, if you can please give us the South African update. Thank you.
Afternoon, colleagues. Albertina, if you don't mind, please do share the presentation on our behalf. I'm just trying to accommodate the bandwidth challenges from this side.
Just 1 second, Prudence.
Hello.
Hello, I'm loading the presentation. 1 second.
Okay. I'm just checking if I was on. I have issues from this. The present. Okay, no problem. As I was
Okay. Are you able to see the presentation? Hello?
I see Prudence left the meeting and has just rejoined. So I suspect she's perhaps having technical difficulties. Prudence, are you back?
I'm back. Sorry, Raquel. Sorry, colleagues. Yeah, I'm having some challenges. Thank you. Thank you so much. Albertina, you can go to the next slide. I apologize.
No problem.
As I was saying that Zuki and I are part of a team. We are called the advisory group, formed and established on the 2nd to the 3rd of March 2020, when we launched the Fiscal Openness Accelerator project in South Africa. One of the last meetings we had physically. So basically, we are very excited for this collaboration. We've partnered before with civil society on other projects, but as you may or may not know, we have been struggling in terms of improving our public participation scoring, because as much as we do very well on transparency, we have not seen the effects of this when it comes to practical implementation and use of the data that we publish on our sites and on the portal that we have. So this group of advisory team is basically constituting of civil society organization representatives. We have about organizations as many as 5 from civil society side, and we have government departments which are at the center of government. So it is departments that will usually be neutral in terms of their priorities, so they would not necessarily be advocating for education or health or so on. So it would be like a planning department, national treasury from a finance perspective, and cooperative governance, which focuses on a much broader local government and intergovernmental relations perspective, and our public service administration department, which focuses on the personnel side of things. So later in our deliberations, as the advisory group started meeting, we made a suggestion that we should include a local government perspective on the issues that we are going to be discussing, because I hear many nations are saying that they have legislated public participation and it is institutionalized. The same can be said about South African local government, where we have our integrated development plans requires that every community or every municipality consults their citizens in the plans that they have for a particular financial year. But the legislative requirement has not necessarily been very effective, in that there are over 280 something municipalities, but the compliance thereof is just from sometimes some people will tell you that it is more of a consultation, or rather an information session, and then they don't get the input that they thought they would be able to get. So the implementation of what is legislated does not yield the results that we want to see. So we thought it was very important for us to get the local government experience, and the city of Joburg being one of the biggest cities in the nation, we thought they would be able to give us some insights on their experience and what they think we can apply in when we look at the different mechanisms, and at what sphere of government do they think it will be more effective. And we also included the cooperative government, because they are the ones who hold the legislation for the local government sphere in terms of their municipalities and the kind of programs they have. And we also thought it was important to have the legislature. We are happy that we see the example of our parliamentary budget office being used in the World Bank's presentation, but we have not also seen the results of that participation in terms of lessening the requests from the formulation and implementation side of the budget process. So it looks like it's more of a post-factor kind of consultation, which does not necessarily bring much change to the budgeting process. And we also included the Auditor General, because the Auditor General usually they perform social audits, but we have not had some lessons from them in terms of their experience. So we thought they would also bring value to the team. Next slide, please. So this is all information that we have been discussing thus far, and it is a work in progress. We are not yet where we would like to be. So we just recently finished the terms of reference, and we've established a platform where we can discuss the mechanisms, and we're gonna be discussing that in our next scheduled meeting next week. So the delays were mainly due to the new normal in terms of our working conditions, and also I think misunderstandings when it comes to the expectations and what the memorandum of understanding is in terms of the roles that we'll be playing, and whether or not we should be allowing for a much more stronger voice, and whose voice is the final one, and those kind of collaborative issues where you have to we need to attend to, and also set an agenda that will be beneficial to both parties. So that is some of the reasons for the delays. But this experience has been very valuable in that it has opened up our eyes in terms of what is possible, and we also realize that the work is a lot. We still have a long way to go, but we really appreciate that we have established a working relationship with civil society, and this will help us in paving the way forward and finding entry points on what can be implemented. Thank you so much.
You're muted, Raquel.
That was a silly move. My apologies. So I was saying that instead of having breakaway groups due to the technical difficulties that a lot of us are having in this meeting, if we could please just talk as plenary here, and here if anyone has got anything to add to the conversation at this stage, or any questions that we can address now, please let us know. Otherwise, we will close the meeting. Okay, so I think there's
Suki raised her hand, and Janet too. Sorry.
Oh, Zuki and Jeanette, please.
Yeah.
Okay, can we start with Zuki, and then we'll come to Jeanette. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm on my phone this time, so no camera, but thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed the inputs, and I was just curious, based on Jeanette's inputs, and also reflecting on, I've now had the pleasure of listening to Sriti both days, which actually each time I think I picked up a wealth of information from all the speakers. But I was curious to hear, are there any, at this point, is there any way to tell whether or not there are potential paradigm shifts around fiscal transparency or public participation norms in the context of IFIs and loans? I'm really reflecting on the South African context and quite excited to some degree at the potential for what might happen in future post-COVID and post the current context, but in specifically looking at the requirements and potential norming of fiscal transparency and public participation. Maybe Jeanette as well would like to weigh in, but just that's really been quite stark for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Jeanette.
Thank you. In fact, I just wanted to thank the Fiscal Transparency Network for the great work you're doing worldwide, because really we, at least in Chile, got always inspired learning what is happening in other countries. So thank you really for that, the work you're doing, being a small team, but very active and inspiring. Now regarding what Suki Swa was saying, I also would like to look in future, to see in future maybe a more profound debate. We could maybe get coordinated together with Fiscal Transparency Network, with GIFT, towards the role of independent fiscal councils or independent fiscal institutions. What could they do towards more fiscal transparency and public participation? We in Chile, we have a fiscal council, independent institution, but they just look at the macroeconomic balance of the budget. So they don't look at the transparency and public participation issues. And as a commission, we already talked to them, and they see our functions very complementary to their official function to make recommendations regarding fiscal balance. So I think this is a really interesting debate. We could maybe get deeper with the help of the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency, and to talk also to OECD and the IMF, because they are the institutions that are analyzing the mandates of IFIs, and it would be really interesting to see not only generally that IFIs have some role regarding fiscal transparency, but they should make concrete recommendations towards useful data and useful participatory processes. And they could be watchdogs, autonomous watchdogs towards how is the implementation, because it's very easy to talk about fiscal transparency and public participation, but in fact, we are full of useless mechanisms. So to have like an independent institution with a diverse group, autonomous from the government, that continuously looks towards tools, incentives regarding fiscal openness and participation would be really great. And I would be looking very forward if we could get deeper into this debate with GIFT, and hopefully together with OECD and IMF, that this would be very useful and very interesting for us from the Chilean civil society. So, but most of all, thank you for the great work GIFT is doing. I wanted to say especially our appreciation from Chile.
Thank you very much. Those are indeed very valuable suggestions, which we'll obviously take on board. I think it also reiterates the importance of projects like the Fiscal Openness Accelerator project and how important it is to have these peer learning opportunities, these projects, these discussions that we can all learn from each other. In this regard, we want to reiterate the gratitude to the US Department of State's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs, as well as others like the World Bank's OGP Multi-Donor Trust Fund that make projects like that possible and allow us to have these conversations and sit in these rooms together and overcome many of these challenges which we are all facing. Bring our brains together, see how we can overcome, see how we can come together from governments, from civil society, from independent organizations, and how we can all help each other in achieving these common goals that are for the better good. Is there anyone that wants to add any other final word? Don't see anyone on that. Thank you very much to all the presenters for joining us, especially from Chile, Brazil, and Sierra Leone. Even though you're not part of the project that we're currently undertaking, we learned so much from your experiences. So thank you very much for joining us today and sharing with us, because as you know, countries that have already embarked on these experiences before, you have a lot of valuable lessons that you can bring to the table. If you've already made the mistakes before and prevent us from making the same mistakes, great. So thank you once again. There is another session coming up in just over 45 minutes, which sounds extremely interesting, and that's on tax reform in the context of the pandemic, the perspective from civil society. Please join us for that. We're looking forward to it. And thank you, and have a good day further. Bye-bye.